see how I look. Okay, I shouldn't have worn my winter shirt. Okay, spring shirt. I'll know when we hit the time. This should 17 seconds. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our monthly interview with our experts in the Tong Ren community and throughout the world. This month, we have Dr. Shah Sprague, a longtime friend of mine and another practitioner of Tong Ren and a psychotherapist, and he's going to tell you all about that in a few moments. What I wanted to do is tell everybody about the Tong Ren community and what we're doing. And we have a very simple goal. Our goal is that all practitioners, patients, and healers can get help to reduce suffering for people. The more information we have out there, the better the communication, the easier it is to help people. Everything we do is to get this information to help people to heal, because we know this method of the TAM healing system is very helpful, not causing harm, no side effects, and very beneficial for friends, family, in many ways. And we're going to talk about some case studies today, how people's lives are transformed and people brought from the brink of death are brought back through Tong Ren and have their life, and many of them even become practitioners themselves. So the Tong Ren community, tongrencommunity.com in particular, is a centralized venue for people all over the world, including people that I've trained, including Greece, which I'll be doing next week, all over the country, in colleges and universities, massage therapy schools, all those different places. So our goal is for everybody to talk and ask questions. Every day on a regular basis, I get questions from all over the world about what protocols to use, how we best utilize this healing system to help people heal. So that's our goal, and it's going to be a great journey. We've launched just in January. We've had a great response. And each month we have our monthly interview. And I am honored to have Dr. Shah Sprague with us. He works in our clinic in Quincy, as well as in different places throughout Massachusetts and Maine, and I think as well in New Hampshire. And I'm going to welcome him now, and he's going to come in and have a seat, and I look forward to our interview. And remember, everybody out there that is registered and that is watching this now, please ask your questions. I have several questions now, and the most important thing we can do is ask him questions about the expertise, his experiences with Tong Ren, his Tong Ren journey, and all of these things. So thank you very much for joining our webinar, and I look forward to hearing from you later and hearing your comments. But remember, this is for you. This community event is for you, so please ask questions. Thank you. And now I'm going to have him have a seat, and we'll hear from him now. So here we have Dr. Shah Sprague. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, Joe, I came to Tong Ren sort of on a circuitous way. My background was actually in fine arts. I have a master's degree in fine arts. I've always loved art and the visual world. And I had went back to school and got a doctoral degree in psychology. So when I was in art school, I had really bad sciatica, and I couldn't even sit in a chair and tie my shoes. And this was back in the 70s. And I had seen my sister suffer with 2 back operations, and it just didn't look like something I wanted to do. I'd already had 3 operations on my knee from soccer. And so I said, well, I'm going to just try something else. And so I signed up for 3 acupuncture treatments and 3 massages. And I really didn't, there wasn't any reference there. I said, this is a last resort. And by the end of the second session, I was fine. So that was with sciatica. Quite a few years later, around 2000, I had trouble with my knees and feet again. So I was probably one of the earlier clients that went to the yellow pages and found Tom Tam and hobbled in there with this Wilson and who was his understudy at that time. And I had a degree in psychology, but I never really saw that I would ever be doing anything with mind-body medicine. I was not there. And Tom said, I'm doing this healing work, this guinea pig class, and you need to come take a look. And I said, well, yeah, okay, but you know, that's acupuncture. I don't know how to do that. And so I remember going down and standing and watching Tom go through a line, and there was a lady with a nodule, a big size of a walnut on her neck. And he treated her, and he said, where is it? She felt for it. Then he went down and treated a few other people. He came back and he said, what size is the nodule now? And she reached up, and it was like she lost her keys. She actually got she couldn't find it. And then she said, oh, it's the size of a pea. And her eyes just drained water out. And I mean, I'm 5 feet away. So, I mean, you know, it's seeing is believing. That was it for me. And then progressively, I became more involved with Tong Ren, using it over the phone first through an interpreter to somebody in Germany, and then it goes on from there. But yeah, so that's how I became familiar with Tom. I found myself in need, and then I saw people who had been healed. It just was beyond belief.
You actually run your own guinea pig class at times. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, I have had a few seminars in Tong Ren, and really my goal is that your eyes really get opened by understanding how incredible the mind is and working the mind and the body together. And this is something that I have a great debt to Tom for the incredible research that he's done, looking at it and being able to explain it to people. And it's sort of like that song that he's so familiar, to reach for the unreachable star. And as Joe and I are sitting here today, I'm going, you know, all the things that it took to get here, all the people that have been helped. And then I was seeing and remember something, I wish we knew then what we know now, because so many people have benefited from it. And it just, everybody, as Tom says, you take it on your journey. It's not like, it's not dogmatic. It's not do ABC. You find your way, you find your path, you find your Tao. And that's what's so wonderful, is everybody is welcome to come in and sit down and experience it. All they have to do is get past the disbelief. It's just to suspend disbelief.
In terms of healing, especially with your background,
Right.
what would you say is the most important part in terms of for people to understand for the first time about distance healing and Tong Ren? What would be the best way to help people to get over that disbelief and that confusion they may have at the beginning?
Right. Most of that confusion is going to be based on what we already know. It's going to be based in the past. So you're not present at all. And it's either fear-based about something that happened in the past that's going to be repeated, or something that's going to happen in the future. So you're not there. You don't have the tabula rasa. You don't have the clear slate to let anything. So you're not listening. And if you're already having the mind thinking you won't get the parking space, you're right. It's like Carnegie had Dr. Hill look. He said, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So if you just come, suspending that judgment, sitting there, listening to some of the stories, and actually feeling in your body what you're feeling at that time, that's the best. You already have, this is innate. This is part of the unconscious. This is not the first rodeo. Your body and your mind have been around for a long, long time. And that's one of the things I'm so fascinated with, is when we look back pre-literate, pre-verbal, and you see the artwork of people who lived 40,000 years ago. And what happened when Picasso went into Altamira? He said, nothing's new, which I love, because here's the ultimate draftsman that's outdrawn by somebody who wasn't conscious, according to our psychology and anthropology and all the bio. So yeah, I would say just be present.
One of the big questions that people have a lot of times is, how do we sort of have a better understanding of how we are connected in that way? As you said earlier, people had that connection and they weren't probably distracted by modern industrial society. So maybe it was even easier. But in a lot of ways, how do you explain further through how we have that connection in terms of psychotherapy or, say, spirituality?
Yes.
In terms of what connects me to you and what connects me to working on somebody across the world?
Right. It's a great question, and it's one that I think there's a river in ancient Turkey. It's called the Meander River, and there is no science on this earth that has meandered more than psychotherapy or psychology. You know, from before we were conscious, 100,000 years ago, shamans were creating healing through the mind. There wasn't a behavioral kind of a thing. There wasn't a cognitive thing. They were working with the soul. Everything had energy. It was amnestic. The trees had a spirit. The river had a spirit. The mountains had spirits. Everything was interconnected. And then we got really smart, and we started with particularly, it was a challenge for Western science, when Hippocrates decided that we'd get rid of philosophy, even though the Greeks created it. He quickly got rid of it, and he got rid of all the invisible things that couldn't be real because they couldn't be measured. And the trouble with that is we threw out too much. And it's really confused, I think, science, because if you think about it, only the last few thousand years have we been doing some of the amazing arts and sciences that we have, but we've got a much longer history. I mean, the Krugans in Eastern Siberia were doing psychotherapy. They were probably the first psychotherapists. That's 100,000 years ago. What are you saying? Was everybody making the same mistakes? Isn't it interesting that many of the drawings that come out of Africa look and pieces look just like things that were 40,000 years ago in Germany, in Spain? There's a continuity there. There's no church or Medici family that's paying for this. It's actually, there's no ego involved. They're connected. You are already connected. The better question is, how do I reconnect with who I really am and get rid of all the things that have been told that I should follow? This is the path you should be. You should learn atmospheric perspective. You should do that. No. Just start to create. You already have that connection. And we can go into that further, sure.
In terms of psychotherapy, how would you equate all of this to the conscious, collective unconscious, the subconscious mind, and all those different things, as people like Carl Jung in particular try to define these things in a more scientific, modern way, try to quantify it differently. But still, again, as you say, he was just reaching back to the past. He wasn't really creating any new thing.
Right. He made a a comment that I recently reread, and it was just great. He said Freud wanted to bring everything back to what Young called the personal unconscious, which is everything that's happened to you that's been suppressed down, the psychosexual things, all that stuff. And he just said, Freud is such an idealist, which I love, because Jung said, no, the unconscious is so much bigger than that. We're connected way beyond our history. So when you look at what is the collective unconscious is like the cloud that we all go into. The information is out there, and it's how do you access that? Now, there are many ways to do that. It depends whether, if you're a Jungian, if you're Estes, who's a wonderful Jungian psychologist, she would do it through the collective unconscious, through that part of the mind, which Jung called the soul. If you're a spiritual person, you might do it through prayer. You might do it for any kind of ritual that takes you out of your ego state, which is a very young state. We only started talking about 30,000 years ago. So that's not very long. And we only started writing about 5,000 years ago. So, there's a lot more pre-conscious that has created amazing cultures that we're just now beginning to get back in touch with. The mystics and the physicists are saying, you know what, we're not just this linear, the kind of thing, cause and effect. No, the mind is quantum, and things happen at the same time. There are many levels. So there is no time, there is no distance, there is no space. The early people knew that because they were connected. So what I get so excited about is that means that since they're mind people, they already are where we are now. There's no, we're better than them, and it's not hierarchical. So while evolution changes, we can throw balls, we can do all kinds of things. The mind with those are some of the most intelligent human beings ever. And it had nothing to do that they were 40,000 years older than you.
That's a great answer. I mean, it's encouraging to understand that, because the fact that we're all connected, and it invokes the idea of compassion for everyone, which is kind of the core behind our healing, because basically our goal is to help people as much as possible. So what could be better than the fact that we've had this connection with everybody else? And if we focused it as we do in our healing, we can actually focus it on a very specific healing strategy. So in terms of our healing strategy, the TAM healing system and Tong Ren,
right?
How do you think the healing of shamans is one way, but in addition to that, do you think that the TAM healing system, or say the Tong Ren therapy that you and I practice, can even enhance that, or just complement that a little bit?
Oh yeah. It's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice, you practice, you practice. And I just tell you, one of the first, I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. And one of the first people I talked to over the phone was in Germany. And the gal who came to me said, well, you've got to talk to her. She has sleep problems. She's got depression. I said, yeah, but I don't speak German. She said, that's okay. I'll interpret. I said, okay. So after about 2 sessions, her sleep really improved and her level of depression lightened a great deal. And that's only like a couple hours. Mm-hmm. And the interpreter ran up to Tom and said, Tom, you wouldn't believe it. It's just, she's sleeping through the night. And Tom just kind of, yeah, no big deal. No big deal. And she just, what do you mean, Tom? It's no big deal. Yeah, this is amazing. She said, no, it's just like when you learn to drive a clutch car, the first time you're going to think, you stall, after you do it for a while, it becomes easy. That's because it's innate, Joe. Mm-hmm. That's because you already have the skill. It's like, read the book that has no words. You already have everything you need right now. You have to have that belief that there is that imago Dei, there is that soul connection to not just people, but everything in this universe. And I think we're just touching on what the mind can do through practices with like the Tong Ren just getting better and better.
Maybe we can take a couple of more cases. I think people are really interested. We were talking earlier about Parkinson's in particular.
Oh, yes.
So Parkinson's, which seems very overwhelming in our society, I mean, it's very debilitating, but from our healing perspective, it's not that unusual. Can you give us more information about treating something like Parkinson's or Lou Gehrig's?
Right. I have a very good friend who was he's still a lawyer, but he was a very successful lawyer and a trial lawyer, and he became stricken with Parkinson, and pretty much Western science had given up, and everybody was just waiting for the end, and it was pretty sad. And I said, Mike, let's try this, and he came back. Tom and I were putting on a seminar together. Mike came, his pictures on the wall, and he became better and better with treatments over the phone and coming to the seminars, and really got into it. He is taking numbers now, and this was, I think it was 10 years ago. And he'd been remarried and just taking photographs and loving life and just full of energy. And no one would think that Mike was going to be coming back. I mean, it was like he would be slumped over all night long, and you'd find him there in the morning like that. I mean, it was serious. So he's a great testimony to what's possible. And again, it's that suspending what you think you know about what's possible.
Great.
Yeah.
So I have a question from our audience.
Oh, yes. Great.
We're open to the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
It says, what is the best way to transition someone into using Tong Ren healing, especially for new clients that have been leaning on medicine for years to manage symptoms?
Great. I think when I think back to the first person that I was working face to face with, and I had just been doing the cognitive kind of therapy, the speech therapy, and it was going okay. But I said, I'm doing this new thing called Tong Ren. And she was an elderly Japanese lady, and she said, yes. And I said, would you mind if I tried this? She had very serious depression and a lot of PTSD. She had been in the bombing, but there was no information that came out of that, very little. After one session with doing the Tong Ren, it was like opening up Pandora's box. Everything from birth order to the father doing it to the what went on, all it, and that was really the very cathartic and very healing for her. But you couldn't get there talking it. You could not get. I had been with her for 9 months with no results until I started the Tong Ren. And then Rika just, she's doing great. She moved to Colorado. We're still in touch over the phone. She calls me up every once in a while. It's amazing. That was my first. There are a lot of stories, but that was one that I remember because it was like, well, how do you ask somebody? You just do it, as Tom said. You just do it, because if you're afraid that you're going to get turned down, you're still in the ego state. You're not open yourself. And if you're not open yourself, how can you expect your client or friend or family person to be? No, the 90% of communication is nonverbal. So if you say to them with all sincerity, there's no risk here. This has helped millions of people. Why would anybody turn it down? What's in your no bag? How many more things are you going to pull out? And it's just defies logic. And we're talking quantum mind here. We're not talking about what they learned back when Galen was around and stuff. No, this is a whole different new world. This is a revolution. This is what Heraclitus called an entheodromena. It's a spontaneous reversal of everything we've ever known, which I think is really exciting, because it means that, well, we used to think everything was in the blood, and we didn't know that there were little subatomic particles or archetypal image. Now it's like, oh. So I would say just ask them to be aware and reach out, let go of that limb and grab what's new. Yeah, it's a very creative, fun process. It challenges us, all of us.
On that note, another question is, I think, what do you think is the key to giving someone hope in terms of their psychology or their anatomy, their physiology? Yeah. Telling people that it will work, but also, do you think that that's going to also bring them to the next level for healing?
Joe, I used to go into math exams with a lot of hope. I learned not to trust hope at all, because hope keeps both possibilities. You could get 100 or you could get 50 just to start. So I always think, no, you got to get rid of hope, and especially in this field. And you've got to start to accept the fact that you're going to be monofocused. You're only going to focus on what you want. And by just doing that, you've shifted the mind. The mind does not like to be on that bipolar level. It wants to have one focus. And when you bring that focus right in line, and you're saying, I'm going to go 100% in this direction, you get the parking space. It's when you say, I'd really like a spot right in front of Whole Foods or wherever you're going, but I don't think I'll ever get it. You're sending out a signal that you're not going to get it, and that's exactly what you get. So when you go, you focus on what you want and then drop it. Drop it like a lead balloon, because if you analyze it, you've destroyed it. It has to be deeper into that collective unconscious, into that other conscious, which is it's what the Irish call a knowing. It's a knowing sense. And Young even talked about that. He said all the theories, and he could write all kinds of stuff, and you know, so was Freud. They were incredible writers, but he said, when you go in and you're there with your person, that's the only thing that's there. You're in that space with that person, nothing else.
We have another question from the audience.
Great.
This one is from Stephanie.
Oh,
hi, Stephanie. Often we talk about the Tong Ren theory, the Tong Ren practice of relieving a blockage.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Tong Ren can help with mental blockages, especially for patients that have given up or believe it's a lost cause because they've been told they will be on medicine for the rest of their life?
Right. I think that everything starts with the mind. And it's called a nocebo effect in psychology. It's the opposite of the placebo effect. It's one of the biggest challenges that medicine has, is if you plant an outcome in somebody's mind, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I know Ray Perlis at Mass General, he often has to tell his doctors, look, if we give them this medicine, the pharmaceutical companies say that it might not take effect for 6 weeks. If the placebo effect, if they get better just because they think they're getting better, don't destroy that. The nocebo effect is, if I tell you you've got 3 months to live, you'll start fulfilling that. So the first thing we want to get to is really opening that space for anything to happen, a miracle to happen, because we're dealing with that level. You really, and yes, Tong Ren, opening the blockages is exactly right. You open C2 and you start getting rid of all kinds of stuff. You open GB13 and you start relieving yourself from the the past experience. These points, I mean, it's thousands of years of research, and then Tom's work on top of that to make these suited to modern day stressors. Yeah, absolutely.
Another question in terms of a case study, we talked earlier about carpal tunnel.
Right.
I know as a massage therapist, it can be very beneficial to open up the muscles, to release the nerves and stuff like that.
Right.
And you've had experience with carpal tunnel cases?
Yes. I remember one specific one on Neelan Street. There was a lady that I used to go there to get shirts and altered, and she was a tailor, and she absolutely, I mean, I had never seen anybody work as hard as she had 2 shops, and she was sewing probably 18, 19 hours a day, and I came in and she had her thumb was in a bandage, her arm was in a bandage, and she was Chinese, and I said, what happened to you? And she said, well, I can't sew anymore. So it's like, I'm going to go out of business. I said, well, what's going on? She said, well, I've got this carpal tunnel and they want to operate on me, and they say it's going to be this, and I got so much chance of not being able to sew again. I said, well, I've got this little doll. I've never told you about it. And talk about embarrassing. Talk about okay, how do you explain this? You know, and I opened up on the doll, sitting in front of her. I think there were only 2 sessions, and I came back next week, and oh yeah, this was fine. And I think probably things like that. I guess the most embarrassing moment I ever had, Joe, was I got a call from somebody who was having a full-blown out panic attack, and I'm on 95. So I pull off the road, I'm beating on this doll, and I look into my rearview mirror, and there's a policeman. I'm going, oh, I mean, this is, and he gets out of the car, and I've been there for 10 minutes working on this thing. He looks at me and he goes, I've been watching you for about 10 minutes. What the heck are you doing? You kind of have to explain things a little bit, but you'd be surprised. He was saying, oh, you know, my cousin. And it went on, and we had a very nice conversation. Totally understood after you break it down. Don't think the person isn't going to go, hey, you know what? Because your thoughts can change. You can have a bad day, get up, go, oh, I've got this knee pain, I've got this back pain. And you say, wait a minute, what's my mind doing? What's my mind doing? Is this a psychosomatic thing that I'm causing? Hey, what if I think of my knee as being open and the blockage goes away and you're walking? Happens all the time. So yeah, the mind can clear up blockages, working the Tuina, the acupuncture, all of that. I think anything you can do that you're comfortable with to get there, it's in this world, like what we're talking in the internal medicine and the internal energy field. We're just touching the edge, and we're not the smartest people in the stars. There have been ancestors that have been doing stuff that would, I'm sure, if we knew and could talk to them, right, they'd say, oh yeah, that's easy. And like I can hear them saying, well, like Tom, simple, easy. Yeah, where does he come up with this stuff? It's collective. We're all connected.
Right. Another quick question. A lot of what you say is about oneness and connection.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like a spiritual component.
It's a very big thing to wrestle with.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly was paramount for Young. And of course, I wish that we could bring back Freud and Young. And I wish we could, you know, there's a part of Freud that I think, you know, even though he denied it and he said that art and religion was a crutch for neurotics, and it was part of this shame and guilt and stuff. I wish we could walk him through the caves in southern France, and I wish we could hear the conversation between Young. who, was totally, he said, no, he did his dissertation on parapsychology. So here's, and there's this great story, maybe we're but he's sitting there with his mentor who had him all lined up to take over. He was 20 years younger than Freud. And Young said, "What do you think of parapsychology?" And he said, "Oh, that black tar. That's the thing." And at that moment, a book came flying out of Freud's shelf and landed on the case, and it really bothered, according to Young, Freud a lot. And Young just said, "That's an exterior categorization. It's going to happen again," which it did. And so from that kind of moment, they were in two worlds. The scientist who wanted to be accepted by this linear idea that had really started. He wanted to take where Mesmer, the father of modern psychology, had sort of done this thing with magnetism, and Jung wanted it to be empirical. Freud wanted it to be that way, and Jung was saying, no, it's much bigger than that. The mind can do much more than that. So I don't know if I've answered the question. I think I've gotten off track. I apologize. Did I answer that?
Yeah, that covers it very well. Thank you.
Okay.
I've been in your classes, your group
Right.
classes, and I know at times you also integrate Qigong. Can you tell people about the value of Qigong and all those things?
I think it's good to have work done to you, but I think it's so empowering to do Qigong, to do meditation, to do anything that gets you into that creative daimon, into that space where you're beyond your analytical mind, where whether you're making a salad, whether you're creating a work of art, whether you're dancing, where you get in what they call a flow. You don't know what time. I think meditation is really powerful. I think Tom writes about it with the Wu Chi and the Da Peng Gong, and all of those books are just beautifully written to, this is all you need to do, and you've got the physical covered, you've got the spiritual, wherever you want to say. I don't know where the divine line is between spirit and psychology. I don't know that. I think everybody has to find that. And that, I think that gives everybody a great privilege to get to the same place, even if the universe is bringing them in from different parts and points. But I think when you get there, when you get to that collective, that cloud, if you will, then there's the belief that man is on, our psychology particularly is on a telos, and spirituality is on a telos, meaning there's an endpoint to which we're being drawn to. And every part of the human story, the ascent of man, as Bronowski called it, has been written from a perspective that each person is contributing to that end goal, which is somewhere out here. And we'll probably become, like Joni Mitchell says, we'll probably become stardust. We'll probably go back to the garden, which is what I'm hoping, that there is such a thing, which sort of, I think one question that was sort of gets risen between Young, and he was asked two questions, which I found very profound. One at the end of the BBC interview, which was, do you believe in God? And of course, that's the pregnant question that everybody wants to ask the scientist who's written all this stuff about, oh, look what the Christianity and all these religions have done, all that, He said, well, so do you believe? He said, no. And the reporter kind of, oh, said, I know. So it's experiential, whatever that is. And then somebody asked, well, what about past lives? And he said, well, I'll tell you this. If you're living in a house and you know it's going to fall down in 2 weeks, you're going to be unhealthier knowing that. So if you think there's something beyond those 2 weeks, that time before your passing is going to be better quality life. That's fact. That's provable. And so that's what I say, I can't tell. I can't tell, is what Young said. I'm a scientist. I can only go to the edge. But I can tell you, the people who have something to believe in that's transpersonal, that's transcendent, they're healthier than the people who think, oh, this building is going to collapse on me. So I kind of look at that. I think you have a better attitude if you really think that, wow, maybe this energy stuff, maybe how the pyramids got built, maybe some of the other things, maybe there's something beyond hope happening here. So,
A question about the community that we built here.
yeah.
So in terms of what do you think about, what are some of your thoughts and ideas about helping Tong Ren to spread and helping Tong Ren to connect? I mean, we connect when we treat people, and in a lot of ways we want to just basically share information and knowledge, have sort of a heart-centered connection to everybody. Do you have any thoughts on how we can do that in the future?
Boy, Joe, I've got to just say thank you for doing the heavy lifting in this world, because this world is really the technology world, and pulling the group together is just, you're doing an amazing, extraordinary job. And I think that's a huge first step on a 1,000-mile journey. I know for myself, and we talked about this, we as people who have been treated, as people who have seen things happen, we need to write them down, because even just in coming in here and talking a few minutes before, I was going, oh, I've forgotten about that. And those, once it's gone, it's gone. We need to write. We need to communicate more. There are places that are magical, and the only reason I'm bringing this up, which may sound ungermane, but it's not. I had been to Sedona 16 years ago, and I went out there. I was fascinated with the petroglyphs, and I wanted to go back. I went back this past Christmas. I walked into this one place, and this, they talk about the vortexes, and my hands were tingling. That didn't happen 16 years ago. We're different people for having done this work than we are today. So the collective is getting bigger, which means that we can take this and share it with more people, which is exactly what makes the information we're doing spread out. And it's the only way, as Fool's Crow, the Lakota Sioux, just amazing, Lakota, not Sioux, that's a white person's word, but Lakota healer said, we're the only species that can destroy this planet. And that's really what we're talking about. And if you think you aren't causing the matter, think again, because the thought we have here is affecting the butterfly 3,000 miles away. Our thoughts are really powerful. So if we pull them all together and make a collective family, there's no ability for anything to stop. And we will change this. We have to. It's our only hope.
We have another person online to ask you a question.
Oh, yes, please.
As a practitioner, how did you get your staff or office or coworkers on board? I want to bring Tong Ren back to my clinic, but I'm not sure how they will respond.
Okay. Again, it's experiential. And I think that when you get over that fear of being rejected, and even if they do, the focus has to keep coming back. It's like in business, if I want to say that it's snowing out and Joe's convinced that it's not, he may take me off subject, but we have to keep coming back to what we believe, just bringing it back. Maybe you don't get it the first time. Maybe somebody says, oh, that's okay. Then somebody else gets better. And it's by the networking and the stories. I mean, that's what creates the synergy. We're wonderful, complicated, and beings, and the power of story, the power of visual, and seeing what happens and writing about it and telling about it is what makes people go, what have you got to lose? It's their fear coming up against your fear. So it's like, just be fearless. Just go without false evidence of appearing real that they're going to react because based on some past idea you have, or they've said something about, well, we'll never do this, and so you just stay. Be bold. Yeah, have fun. As Tom says, tell a joke. It's not that serious. Don't be. It's just that's just us getting out of our own way. You'll be fine. You'll do great.
A quick question. In other areas, we talked about the mind, oneness, the connections. Do you have any personal opinions on the relationship between healing or Tong Ren and, say, food choices?
Oh yeah, I'm. The more and more I understand about food, and I'm not an expert in it, but I really, I think food that's created with love, food that's homegrown, organic food, it makes you feel better the second you digest it. And I'll just tell you a quick story that for me illustrates it well. I had been doing some Qigong in the afternoon and some Tai Chi, and Tom was putting on a seminar at the Christian Science Monitor, and there were probably 50 or 60 practitioners, and I sat in the audience. It was one of the times I sat in the audience, and I received all that good chi coming from, it was like, you want the collective, we're all here, and I could feel it. My son and I, who was with me, we stopped at a little place and on the top of Newbury Street. It's a bookstore, and I had this big thing of wheatgrass and this wonderful. I felt so tingly and charged that I'm walking down the street, and my son said, "Dad, your apartment was 2 blocks back." But I was just radiating, and the difference from being around all that chi and then actually having good food is it's common sense. I can tell you, there have been times when I have stopped at Wendy's and I hate the feeling I have at the end of the road. Yeah, so I noticed that for myself, but I'd like to know more, and I'd like to grow more, and yeah.
And you're even thinking of starting some greenhouses.
Oh yeah,
and some local projects, right?
Yes. Oh yes, we've got some organic farmers leasing land, and one friend has a greenhouse, and he's looking at, and I want to talk to you, Joe, about it. What are some of the herbs that he can start in the greenhouse we can transfer out? Because he keeps his greenhouse open about, he's probably going to open in March 1st. But it's, yeah, and he grew all kinds of things last year, kale and tomatoes. But I'd like to know more about the herbs. I think that's fascinating, and yeah.
So again, one more thing we'd like to bring out. We've answered the questions of all our audience from all over.
Sure.
And just if you have any final remarks, anything else you'd like to say to encourage people, or any personal experiences, because this has obviously been a transformational experience, learning Tong Ren.
Right.
it's enhanced your healing,
Yes,
exponentially,
absolutely.
getting deeper and deeper. Any other insight or advice you have to people, especially as we were talking about, a lot of the questions are about new people and how to get them to understand and appreciate that transformation?
One of the things that was said to me by a professor that I never forgot, he was looking at some paintings, and it was okay. And he said, "You're better than you think you are." And that's been hallucinated in my mind forever. We tend to be the critic 90% of the time. And we're telling us, oh, that isn't that. Stop criticizing yourself. Invest in who you really are. Because at the deepest level, at that soul level where the power is, you're already there. You already have everything you need to do amazing things. So like Tom's just saying, it's the Nike thing, just do it. And trust yourself, because you really are way better than you think. When we start to analyze, we're out of the flow of the creativity. But there's a term called the creative diamond. Young talked about it a lot. It's in probably everything. You have a creative spirit. That's who we are. We're the only species that can do what we've done. And I will argue to the day I die that it's not all happened in the last 3,000 to 4,000 years. Sorry, that's the limit. I'm happy about all the things that we've built and all the great, but guess what? We didn't walk out of the jungle because we thought, oh, we're going to walk out of the jungle and start building bridges and whatever. No, there was what Julian Jaynes called that unconscious part of ourselves that morphed us out, and we created art, we created all kinds of things. Trust that unconscious part of yourself. Really, it's not enough just to do behavioral or take drugs, or you really got to participate in your own evolution. And the psychic evolution is not linear. We've been doing this for 100,000 years. It's not just a couple thousand. No. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you here. We've known each other probably more than 10, 15 years now.
Yes, please.
And like I say, it's a great privilege to have you here. And I really appreciate answering all the questions for the people. And I greatly appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you to everybody here. This is very, very exciting. It is really an evolution. It's a total Theodromina. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Be well.